semnol kake mo faseda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I'm your host, Matterall, and today I have Carneros and Ron with me. How's it going, guys?
Good morning.
All right, let's sort that out. Carneros, everybody knows your voice by now, but how are you doing?
What voice? You can barely hear me.
Right.
Just kidding.
And we also have Ron joining us. Elise couldn't be here today. How's it going, Ron?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great.
All right. We also have Dunk Dinkle with his monocle. Check that out.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
We'll have to put a picture of it on the podcast for listeners. And also you're seeing our engineer, McLeod.
Hey, guys.
Okay. All right, so that's a Talking in Stations crew. For guests today, we have Pear.
Hello.
He is an FC for Goonswarm. And we have Pando from the Initiative.
Hey, hey.
And we have Vily from Test.
Good afternoon, Matterall. Pleasure to be on the show as always. You guys are great.
Yay.
Thanks. That's nice. It's like wearing a tie to a dinner party. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about because EVE is kicking into another busy summer, it looks like. If you think back to 2018, it was a really, really eventful summer, which is unusual. And it looks like that's might be shaping up to be a repeat of that. But we shall find out. Well, where should we start? I want to start at the beginning, Carneros.
I'd say start with the State of the Union. So, to those people who are new to this part of EVE, every now and then the Imperium will do a big meeting, and it generally has a significant. Oh, thank you. It generally has a significant message and purpose. Often it's kicking off war. And we call it the State of the Union because it's the Goonswarm and allies and friends. So we had one yesterday, and it was a little different from the last couple. So if you remember ones before previous wars where there was a big storyline, there was a big hype discussion and got everybody riled up. They didn't do that this time. Instead, they said, look, this is going to be a short one. We're going to tell you what's going on. You're probably all waiting to hear who we're going to attack because you all know we're going to war. We'll just jump into it. I'm not going to answer a bunch of questions, and then we're going to get in fleets and roll out. And everyone was ready for it. Should I just go ahead and jump in?
Yes, so that's what the soda was.
That's what a State of the Union is.
Oh,
and
right.
Here's what yesterday's was. We go to war these days to improve our advantage over our foes. We do not go to war to take and hold regions.
You got to put a little more emotion into this. Come on.
It was really an unemotional soda.
Sorry to interrupt, guys.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm feeling it now.
We go to war to improve our advantage over our foes. We do not go to war to take and hold regions.
I could learn so much from Dunk Dinkle. Absolutely. I'm so monotone. All right. We're going to war this time to glass Tribute and burn NC Dot. No offense, Matterall. We love you. But we also have limits. We're not going to follow them into the drone regions if they retreat. And then he went into, that's the basic parameters. And then our dear leader, the Mittani, went into our perspective and said, guys, approach this as if we hadn't won the last few engagements in recent months. Treat this like a new war. There's a new war system to learn with Sinojammers that didn't exist before, and that's going to require a learning curve. And he said, also, we're going to plan to use this war to train our next generation of capital FCs. Hopefully Apple Pear can say a couple words about that later. And then, he made a couple predictions about what he thinks the other side will do. And then he made some comments that Delve's not going to be safe. We're deploying everything, so there's not going to be a super cap umbrella for your pretty Rorqual or your hyperspatial fit Nyx. Don't do dumb stuff. Routing and mining at your own risk. I would personally also add, don't use any of the Stargates into 1DQ, 1 TAC A. That's dumb. And don't use any jump beacons.
Traps. Okay, so there's an invasion underway. The giant war machines of the Imperium have been moved, and I don't know if they're there yet, but moved to the north to basically trash Tribute, which is the home of NCPL, and destroy as much as they can while they're up there. But they're not going to settle there. They can't settle there. They would have to be patrolling it constantly. Apple Pear, what's that like?
Let me first say something about the South. I have had a few of South State of the Union, and everyone was with a lot of hurf and lures. We're going to do this. This is our foes, pushing a narrative that's there, and etc. And this is the first one where there hasn't really been pushed a narrative. Has been just given some goals we have and told people to make your own narrative. So this is like a complete different State of the Union that we ever had before. So this is a whole other feel for me. I don't know if others, that's at least a thing. And after that, we just started moving like 4,000 people.
Yeah, that's what I heard, 4,000 people. Vily, you're former Goon Swarm, familiar with this kind of cycle that happens all the time. What do you think's going on here?
Like in what regard? Like the mighty bees have outgrown their hive and now feel the need to apply stingers to their enemies. You got to clarify the question a little more.
Yeah. It was a bad throw. What I mean is, what is the process of like going from State of the Union and then into a fleet immediately to move on your enemies? And why is this one like less hype than usual?
I don't think it's less hype than usual. I would say it's just as much hype as normal, to be honest. I mean, there's no existential threat that's really threatening them at this point, but it's pretty on par with most State of the Unions, to be honest.
Did you know this is the target Tribute?
I mean, I could guess. I still don't even know where they're staged out of, to be honest. But it was pretty obvious that they were going to head northward, and if you head northward, you're either going through GOTG or you're going into Tribute. So, and since GOTG has been on pretty good terms with Imperium in the last month or two, then shocker.
Yeah, what happened there? Like, I'm not quite sure I understand the role Sort Dragon is playing in this. I opened that up to Pando as well, or Apple Pear.
I think he's just a bit pissed about the fact that P8s, etc., started invading them, and they needed something to shoot, and they are close by, so they started shooting things with darkness close by. I don't know exactly what his thought is, but I get that feeling.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems Pandemic family of alliances has had over the last 2 to 3, 4 years has been every time something happens and things get a little boring, they feel the need to cannibalize their local alliances, completely ignorant of kind of the meta of like the game at the moment in terms of how things work. So when Test was in Vale, PL and NC moved in, and they were like, okay, you're going to be our farm content now, and we just moved out. And after the end of World War B, PL and NC and Horde were like, okay, well, GOTG, you're our content now. And it started off this bitter war without really thinking about the long term, which is that you need these alliances on your side. And it creates a really interesting situation now where they've lost such a massive amount of their critical mass.
Yeah. So, Pando, is the initiative deploying as well?
Well, so technically we are still, I mean, if you want to call it deploy, we prepared for basically for a case like this. We didn't predict it at the time, but we moved stuff into Harkonnen to be ready to hit the north whenever we want. I think you could say it had an impact on the situation for NC for the whole Spire thing and so on, right? Because they couldn't as freely move their stuff around. They always had to be a little bit aware that we are there, we can hit them anytime. And that's exactly what we plan on doing once the war kicks off properly, right? We're ready to go as always. And I'm actually surprised it's happening that fast. But yeah, we're happy to go to war. I mean, we were happy the entire time. We were just waiting for everyone to join in, basically.
So last night I was streaming, and the last place, and you guys don't have to, give a definite answer. I know, OPSEC and all that, but the last place that I saw them was 6RCQ, and I think that was just to burn off, some jump timers. And from what I've heard, Init is going to do some cleanup around Cloud Ring and some of those areas with the new Keepstar that you guys just dropped, BTAC D. I was wondering, you had any thoughts on that, or if you've heard that yet, or
We're gonna do some cleanup in Cloud Ring. What's
I guess
Cloud Ring to clean up?
Yeah, I don't know. That's just what I heard. Is clean up around that area.
So the BHD Keepstar, we just used that timing with the move up because we wanted to place that thing anyway. Just because it's a tricky gate to have it covered on both sides. There's no connection there between any Cloud Ring stuff and that's the campaign itself. Like we always treat Cloud Ring like a little bit of a free for all kind of region. We've got a little bit of space there that we rent out, but basically there's like who lives there. What's that name again? Snuff got a system there. Then Pen is out. Got a Constellation, and then there's some other guys in there. But they're smaller guys. We're not dropping shit on them all day. We just treat them like just like content basically for like smaller gangs and so on. I think Cass roams around there all the time too. So it's more like a content region in our eyes, to be honest. It's not like a strategic importance kind of thing.
Yeah, and yesterday we moved. We had I think we had over 10 fleets with capitals, and then 4 or 5 fleets with subcaps. So we had less subcap fleets than capital fleets. And I think the move took about 3.5 hours. We were there. The State of the Union started at 1900, and we were pretty much done at 2230 Eve. So it was a very smooth move. It took a lot of things, etc. But for the rest, it didn't take that long to move all that stuff to where it needed to be. So that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, we actually formed only to cover you guys first. We had a couple of fleets and then split them up so we can cover all the gates, all the choke points and stuff. And we were ready for, dictators to arrest and stuff like this, but there was actually nothing happening. I was actually kind of disappointed. Nobody showed to, try to at least make it a little bit of a pain for the FCs to move that massive fleet.
I saw one
dictator. Yeah, exactly. There was one dictator. We killed it, and then killed two bubbles, and that was it. I got to smart bomb 2 bubbles, but hey, whatever.
There was one harassment thing that was happening to the move up itself. There's kind of a funny story behind it. There was a guy who made a character to resemble Apple Pear's name, and it made a fleet. And he went to 1DQ, and he was inviting people off the Keepstar tether and trying to warp them out and kill them.
It's too funny.
Apple Pear, tell us about that.
Yeah, we found it like a day or 2 days ago. Found it out that he was doing that, and he did it already the day before to fight people, warp them off, and then bubble them and kill them. So I petitioned that yesterday, I think, day before, and I just checked up, and the name doesn't exist anymore. So that's at least taken care of. But yeah, people try all kinds of things to get people to join fleets and etc. And if people are stupid, they're not reading pings, then they die. So yeah, that happens.
Yeah, people have been doing that for a long time. Back in Catch 1.0 for Brave, they would make fleets in the name of one of our popular FCs, Blue Ice, that was like, one Unicode away. And as soon as they join fleet, warp them off into a POS or something like that and kill them. And at the time, CCP really didn't do anything about it. So I think the policy has changed since then.
No, wait. The warping off is still fine. I think that's also, and it's good stuff.
I'm talking more.
I used to do that all the time.
The
name
impersonation, yeah.
Okay.
Where the average user can't tell the difference,
Yeah, we actually
I think the key is it was warping off to a Death Star POS that would just instantly kill them.
Yeah, this one had like my picture, etc., pretty close to what I had, etc. So they really put some effort in to make it look like it was my character. So yeah.
Well, that's pretty funny. These are inventive tricks early on, but they're really just comedy. I mean, the big showing by Goonswarm. What'd you have? Like 490? You don't have to tell me, but I'll try to recite numbers. 450 Titans, both armor and shield. About double that for super carriers, and then I think 500 faxes or something.
We had a lot. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm not sure if you can still double the super carrier numbers, because I think people have been pushing for Titans. Yeah, so you probably have still more supers, obviously, but like 400 Titans, you get probably, I would say, 150 supers now. So that's kind of. I would say. I mean, I'm not sure what the numbers are in Goons at the moment. We certainly had more Titans than we had supers, actually.
Yes, I think I'm wrong. I think it was like 375-ish for the supers, but I wrote these down. I can't find them right now. But that's a lot of people. You had over 4,000 accounts logged in for this move op. That's a giant showing.
Yeah, I was quite surprised. Like, there were at 1,400 people in 1DQ. It was like, And then already some people were all around the map to do preparations, etc. And we had over 3,000 people in Mumble listening to the State of the Union. So, yeah, there were some good numbers there.
And you guys ended up in 6RC, which is typical for you guys. That's where you stage when you attack the north. That's your first outpost.
Yeah, last time it was not, of course. That was the last time we were there. We ended up in 6RCQ to do the war in the north, and we will see what happens from there.
Well, it's the closest keepster to the north, so it's basically the starting point of this whole thing, I would guess.
Right, it's the frontier. Okay, thank you. I have some numbers now from CTAC-N. The Titans were 494. That's higher than I had heard initially. Super carrier count was...
So the real number is also higher.
Yeah, and this is the first move. There'll be trickling in of other ships coming later for other people in other time zones. But yeah, super carriers were at 397, and the force auxiliaries, which are the faxes or folkses, is 337. And 300 carriers and 270 dreadnoughts. That is a gigantic armada. Literally, the reaction from the north has been to basically the Northern Coalition had their State of the Alliance, SOTA, as well. I don't know what PL did, but the nature of it was, look, this thing's big. We'll fight fights that we can fight. We won't. We're clearly not going to be able to, take this on head on like we would want to. So the actual reaction as far as actions are that a lot of structures have been coming down in preparation for this the winter is coming. You know what I mean? Like
winter and summer.
I was really surprised about that. Like, I understand the idea about doing that. Like, you want to save your structure, you don't want to get them killed, etc. But on the other kind, and it sounds a bit that NCPL already feel they're defeated without fighting at all, and broadcasting that to their members. So that's like that doesn't sound good for their morale. Then they kill a boss. Yeah, like we kill bosses long enough all the time, etc. When they're blue and they're offline because kill mills, etc. But then all those kind of things come on Reddit and other places to push in the morale of NCPL and all those kind of things. So yeah, I was pretty surprised them doing that to anchor all the structures and pretty much sound the defeat already towards their members.
Well, I don't know if they're sounding defeat. I would. Pando, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, from a morale point of view, I think it would be worse to bullshit your people and tell them, like, oh yeah, this is going to be great, everyone gets resubbed and this is going to be the greatest war ever, while you actually know the numbers are against you. And if you don't have a plan in mind to do it, I mean, they had time to prepare something to, fight outnumbered to some degree. I mean, Sandragem is our thing. I'm sure we're going to talk about that later. But if you don't have a real plan, you don't have a strategy to win it, and you actually think you're not going to win this war, like, why would you tell your people to, that this war is going to be the best war ever, and and in the end, it all, it comes to nothing. Then morale is going to get hit afterwards. So, I probably think it's like a long-term strategy. I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's the correct way, but I understand where they're coming from for sure.
Yeah, you never want to be in a position to be lying to your alliance members, because it will only end bad in the long term, right? If the actions they have taken, to me, make perfectly fine sense within the game mechanics and the situation they're looking at. I think they lack a clear message on how they plan to go into guerrilla mode, but I don't necessarily disagree with any of the strategic moves they've made so far.
So Horde Bean, so we can assume he's from Horde, says, I see this as a pointless war, to be honest. Do you guys agree?
Well, from the outside, right? I don't know what the Imperium is thinking, but from the outside, it's pretty clear they're going to go out and knock out all their industrial infrastructure. You knock out all of the ability for them to produce a war machine when you kill their Sotoyos and all that kind of stuff, and their infrastructure. You set them back months and months and months in this arms race of Titans and Supers and Dreads and Force Oxes. So when I hear Matani talk about glassing, what I'm hearing is he's setting them back 3 to 6 months industrially in their competition to stay up with Imperium.
Well, and the reality is it'll be more than 3 to 6 months, right? Because not only is it, just 3 months for your moon mining to return, but it's also like confidence in your ability to do something, confidence in the ability to set a structure down and know it's going to survive is one of the most fundamental components of effectively building up an industrial area. And if you have the threat of like every 3 months somebody's going to come in and just glass the whole region, it's very hard for people to properly invest in the infrastructure that is needed to establish a proper economic zone.
Exactly. Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Yep.
So this is burning the fields.
Well,
it's not only burning the fields, but
it's like, let's fill their mines with water and acid and make it really difficult.
Like who wants to anchor a Sotillo and then double or triple rig that Sotillo, which costs 60 or 70 billion ESC each, where those rigs only pay for themselves if the Sotillo lasts for like a year or more, right? Nobody wants to pay for those rigs. So then you're paying an additional 3, 4, 5 bill per super build. Like just thing after thing after thing that compounds and makes it more difficult to compete.
Makes them hard to, like, if you see the numbers on the MER, we're going to drop like flies for now, but as soon as we're coming back to Delve, we'll be at the same numbers as that. But they will have to rebuild so much infrastructure to get close to making the same money as they did before the war. Yeah, this just setting them back so much time. That's how EVE works these days.
I'm not gonna lie, like I'm just looking at the kill feed from like Delve today, and it's like 5 supers dead and like God knows how many Rorquals and carriers, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, boys, do these people not like read pings or anything?
Yeah, it makes me feel great because those people are going to buy new ships, and those new ships need to be produced. So people are going to make money because people are losing those ships. Is that not amazing? And all those people who are just idiots normally and then get saved because we have good people in saving people in general, those idiots are just going to die all the time now. It's amazing for me.
Well, we'll talk about a little bit of a counterattack, or if that's what you can call it, in a minute. But first, I want to get more on the narrative of this story, and is it pointless or not? How did this fight actually brew into what it is now, a full mobilization?
The super cap builders ran out of people to buy their stuff, so they put together a narrative to destroy more. That was a joke.
Customers wanted.
It's the legendary few cutter.
If you look at the forums, then you sometimes think that way, yes. But no, yeah, we the Six and squads have done their thing lately. The whole Spire has died pretty much. They reset that region, and things have been brewing for a while now. And people get antsy and bored and feel like, let's shoot things again. And NC still needs to be punished from the results of the casino war. So why not use this region this time and the reason to teach them a lesson and reset them for a while? They deserve that.
I think there's actually, it's not all just like a narrative that just got artificially like created by Midney. I think over the years, don't forget, there has been like personal attacks also towards Midney, obviously. And like, it's not always the greatest community of all time here. Everyone in this room probably knows that. And he probably, took that botting thing also personal, right? Like, there's hard proof right there that people are actually just talking shit. Right? Over the years, it was always goons botting, and there's some truth to that. There's, to that narrative, not to the goons botting, obviously. So, I think it's very, very much a personal thing for him too. That's why he, got all emotional about it and, rallied the troops. I think it's not all just created. It's just, it developed into this.
Well, let's explain that a little bit for podcast listeners, because I don't know if we covered it. Right? Anyone have a firm grasp on like the narrative events that happened, but about the botting and the propaganda about botting, and then
what? So it's very simple. It's very simple. There was like over the years, it was always goons being accused of being like the botters and stuff, and it was just like, especially on Reddit, which is obviously, Reddit is very lopsided politically, like EVE-wise, but let's not get into that right now. But it was always goons, and now CCP Peligro posts this the stats, the actual hard numbers, and it turns out it's actually not goons. It's like a lot of Solar, and then actually PanFam had 16% of all bots banned of all time, I think, right? Isn't that the stats?
Yeah.
So, and that's basically the corner where the hate towards goons always has been coming from, right? So,
Am I mistaken in thinking that pie chart represents all bans from all alliances since the beginning of the game? Correct. Or was it just okay?
Well,
so
no, from like 2006. So it's like basically the beginning of the game
when they were tracking it. Yeah. So it's not just bans for botting; it's just bans in general.
But you can see that basically what you see is that like outside 2 or 3 alliances, it's all alliances that are renter alliances. Then we have the groups that prefer renting and etc. and want to keep renting, like NC, PL, etc. are the biggest group, or one of the biggest groups to have that, like 60%. We had also with Imperium Associates and Pop Lord, we had some, etc. Also some percent, of course, but it's all renting, and we already have within the Imperium also have a big thing against renting in general. Mittens doesn't like it, and what we saw is people were always, as soon as it was they could style goons. Oh, goons are botting, or they had an example, then they will always go full frontal against us, and etc. And those people who were talking about botting is bad and we need to stop that didn't really talk about the fact that it was not goons that were the big groups that had the renter alliance that botted a lot, but it were their own renting alliance, and then they kept quiet. So, not took their words back from, hey, it's always goons that are doing that or blaming goons. No, it's themselves. And I think that didn't help. It felt a lot of vindication towards Mittens that his people, that there was no proof that it was not his people that were that. But it also felt like, they're not. There were always the persons who were talking about botting this, botting that, and now they're talking it a bit. Okay, yeah, this is okay because this and this and this. So it's that whole narrative there that didn't help, and I think that was maybe partially a reason to go to war. But yeah.
Yeah, I know I definitely felt pretty vindicated when I saw that chart, and like Test always takes a lot of shit for like, oh, you guys have kids with guns, and like kids with guns was like 2% of like total, and half of the time they've been there has been under other alliances, and I was like, oh yes, it's kids with guns, and then Fraternity Treasury is like been around for half a year and have like 5% of all of Eve's ever fucking botting. It's like,
what's the time difference between these? By the way, it's Noisy Gamer points out it's the top 25 alliances, so below that they didn't really count it, but it is the top 25. And some groups are relatively new, maybe 2 or 3 years old, but some groups go back for over a decade. So what's some context to the groups that are on there with like a 2%? Have we matched up like, I don't know. I think if you
someone
see, like,
did, yes.
Someone did, okay. And what were the results of that, kind of like balancing it out for how long people have been around, how long the groups have been around versus how many of them have been banned?
I don't have the link, but obviously, yeah, once again, Fraternity Treasury with 18 months and 5% is like mass.
High.
Yeah, they did a graph where they tried to show the age of the alliance versus how much the botting was caught, but it doesn't really present a persuading argument. And without more data, if you had data about year over year comparisons, but we don't have that, so we have like one data point, and they're trying to make a PhD thesis out of it. It's just not enough information.
Okay, but I think the one surprise there was just how fast fraternities renters have accumulated bans, and we assume it's because of botting and violations like that, since that's the majority of it. Well, it's interesting. What happened to fire all this off was an initial post by Peligro that basically said, we've banned 2 groups, so be aware. And the 2 groups that they banned were renters from Goonswarm, essentially Imperium, and renters from Fraternity. And Elo Knight said, well, wait a minute, like, why don't you put out the percentages so that people can see that maybe it was only, and Elo's talking about Fraternity at this point, maybe Fraternity only has 10 people, whereas Imperium has 100. And I think the response to that was the pie chart. So Peligro went above and beyond and put out a pie chart of all bans in this game since 2006. And that lent vindication to Mittani and the Imperium. So because they've been blamed constantly, as Pando was explaining, for being botters and that sort of thing. And then this big brawl erupts in Talking in Station's public channel. and Matani is just blasting people and really enjoying that vindication. And then he says, "That's it, we're going to war." And so that's the toppings of let's go and burn these guys that are constantly hiding renters and botters and stuff like that. We're going to go and destroy their infrastructure. But I think that,
to be clear, what he actually said was to eat his ass.
Yes.
Yeah, we weren't going to go into that.
He got very riled up, though. He got very riled up.
Is that riled up for him?
Yeah, he called that the pie chart of shame, and he for whatever reason it riled him up. So he went on the warpath and went around. And he wasn't just wild and crazy in the Talking in Stations Discord, although that was maybe the most spectacular. But he was riled up in all his channels. He chimed in places where he only talks, every 3 months, and he was riled up.
We got pings from him.
How funny is it though that CCP can, in the first time ever, call themselves content creators? Then, right?
I don't think they want that kind of label on them,
but I think I basically was a thing that was the last straw or something like that, because people were already antsy for a war for like 2 months, 3 months. They were like, we have now recovered from the last war and everybody is ready to go. Everybody is not burnt out anymore. Let's go. And I think this was the last point that got there.
All right. And so that's interesting to know, though. That's new to me that he was riled up. He was really genuinely riled up.
Well, it seemed to me that he wasn't just acting a role, which he can do. He's capable of role playing. We know his background, but it seems to me he was feeling some of it. And honestly, you can only be at peace for so long in this game before you just get tired of ratting drama and mining drama and that stuff.
Yeah. All right. Then one other thing.
Get a little stir crazy, right?
Yeah. I heard there was a rumor, and this may be a rumor, that right after this war is like about to happen, like on a Friday, there's rumor that a corporation was kicked from Imperium or kicked from Goonswarm for botting or something like that. Was that true?
Yeah. There were two corporations. One corporation was asked to leave. Two corporations were asked to leave, and one of those corporations were then being were inviting in our corporation channels. The Kremlin were like going stir crazy and calling people bad names, Mittens and other people, and then they were like, "You don't have a week now to move out. You're gone now." So they got kicked directly, and pretty much all those people were moved around to other corporations, and and all the ISK they had were stolen by all directors, and that corp is now gone.
The directors of the corp stole the ISK from their members?
No, other directors stole the ISK from the corp, because we had the CEO was like being really riled up and calling people names. So normally when people get asked to leave, that corp was like not doing the PAPs they needed. They're not, and they had some other things with compliance issues. They were not picking up, and leadership was not around that much. So they got asked to leave, and then two of their CEO and directors were talking in our Kremlin, that is our channel for all corp directors and CEOs and sub-directors from organizations. They were calling people names who told them to leave and got very riled up. And then Mittens and I think a nominate was there, or somebody else, were like, "Oh, we have now enough from you," and he logged in and kicked the corp out of the alliance directly. And then some people had to move that had director roles, and those transferred some citadels to other corporations and stole all the ISK out of the corp well before they left.
Yikes. They walked the
they
plank.
Had shot themselves in the foot at that point.
Yeah, they did.
Not to change the subject, but I'd like to extend a warm fountain welcome to the Pandemic Legion fleet that's currently going through. I see you.
All right,
Okay,
so
back to our show.
yeah. So there's a big to do. The drums of war start pounding, and now we've seen this state of the Union and a state of the Alliance for NC. And there has been a giant mobilization of 4,000 characters that moved north to a forward staging area in 9-tax-C, was it? And here's the thing, like, I think the plan, from what I've heard as far as rumors, and maybe this was leaked and maybe it's a disinformation, I'm not sure, but it is to go into NPC space in Pureblind and then up to Venal and then to rain fire down into Tribute and come in that direction. To do that, would they need Sword Dragon to step aside, or what's Sword Dragon's role in this, and how is he caught in the middle? And he's the leader of Dead Coalition.
In the State of the Union, a question was raised. He didn't take very many questions, but a question was raised. Do we have any allies in this war? No comment. We don't have any allies to mention at this time. We'll see. And that is one of the things going forward, looking at this war, that we're all going to be watching for. If you're new to watching EVE Wars, things you're going to be watching for include what other alliances are going to throw their hat into the ring and pick a side, or even what alliances will show up at the war zone but not pick a side and just shoot anybody. That happens in EVE. And then you'll be watching to see, what new fleet doctrines are debuted, or new tactics, because you've got, these new Sino jammers that are a factor. There's a few things to watch for, but Sword Dragon. But I don't know what's going on with him.
Well, funny enough, when you first mentioned Sword Dragon earlier, right that second he actually comboed me. Like he was. Yeah. But like he didn't tell me anything super obscene. But I believe
it's late at night over there right now. It's like 2 a.m. or something.
I think it's like 4 a.m. Yeah.
Oh, 4 a.m. Yeah, well, he said he was sick and he just... he is? Well, so he just updated me on like status there. But I believe it's like... I don't know what exactly they're going to do, but I believe it's like very easy to say PanFam didn't treat GOTG that well, or Dead Coalition that well. So why would he step in and help them? And then I think we're on good terms with him. So why wouldn't he, send some fleets and shoot some bad guys? What exactly they're gonna do or whatever, like I don't know, but I mean, I think that would be my prediction. Right?
Well, here's a confirmation of something, because Sword Dragon is in chat. He just wrote, "We sure ain't helping PL and NC and Horde." Now, so let's actually back this up, because I think it's a very interesting statement, and that is, in 2018, the Imperium was striking the north and burning a lot of it down, especially in the form of keep stars, which is why the NC this time around has taken down keep stars in advance, so they don't get burned down for nothing. And Sword Dragon made a deal. He would give over faction Fortizars in order to delay for 6 months any more of this campaign towards his people, his group, the Dead Coalition. And he made a deal for his friends as well, his allies, for 1 month of a cooling of hostilities, basically a ceasefire. It was called the deal. And that was arranged by Aerith. And Aerith, after that deal, basically said, like, well, this will get us a bit of treasure. It'll avoid burnout for our FCs, and it'll divide the North. Immediately after the deal was made, Gobbins took exception to it right away. He's the leader of Pandemic Horde, who's a former ally, and basically said, what you did is terrible, and we're going to war with you. And he and Elo Knight invaded renter space for the Dead Coalition. So there was a fracture. And NC at first said, we're going to reset Horde, and really didn't do much to defend Dead Coalition. So after a while, instead of being on Dead Coalition's side, they just said, well, we're neutral. So nothing happened. And now there may have been political talk in between there, and eventually Horde and Elo Knight took off and did something else. But that was a bad split. So now you have a continuation of that, don't you, where Sort hasn't really, I mean, the North hasn't been the same since that deal was struck. And maybe it wasn't, maybe it was already fracturing before that. But is this an extension of an Aerith plan that is actually working? It's just taken a long time to work?
Oh, come on, please.
I'm asking the question.
It's more the nature of NCPL than it's really, I take that plan, because the nature of NCPL, what you see over and over again is shoot their allies, they had the previous war, so they have their content because they don't have anything else to shoot, and Provi is not that fun anymore, I guess. So yeah, I think that's more the nature of NCPL, and to break bonds very badly after a war from the people that helped them, and they helped there. So yeah, then really it's an error plan.
Yeah, to me, like, as much, like, here's the strange thing. Like, GOTG paid 40 faction forts to give reasons for the Imperium to go home. You know, they paid the ransom, you know, so that, you know, the army would turn around and go back home. And everybody else in the North decided that they had now become the enemy for paying off Imperium. And to me, this is like one of the most crazy things about the whole situation. Is like, instead of being the good guy who got them to leave, they're now the enemy for paying them off. Everybody knew that they were going to stay until something happened that gave them a reason to go home. Somebody had to pay up. Somebody had to do something, and it's like, no.
But wasn't the problem with that they paid the faction forts to be safe for 6 months while everyone else is just safe for 1 month? So for
yes, but they're also the ones that are directly on the front line too, right? And
yes,
they were the ones.
I'm not trying to take any side, but I'm saying in the line members' point of view, it looks like so they're just stopping this for a month and then we get killed while GOTG just steps aside. That's what it looks for them.
So Sword Dragon says some additional information here. Also, the deal was made with Vince's full knowledge. Vince is the leader of NC Dot. NC was supposed to pay for some of the forts, but did not.
But what was about that, so stuff got leaked by some Slice dude. Maybe that dude that now got kicked, I don't know. But someone...
Right, Rick.
Yeah, so isn't that exactly the guy who fucked up some Google Sheet thing? But so that thing got leaked premature, right? So I believe it would have taken another couple of days to flesh out that deal, because you also could tell there's a couple of holes in that deal. Like, we actually weren't happy about it from an inner perspective, and we actually thought about, like, look, there's holes everywhere. We could do this or this or this. It's not against the deal. We could hurt like GOTG in so many ways without breaking the deal, which we didn't end up doing. But you could tell that this deal wasn't the most perfectly planned out, waterproof one, right? I think it was leaked early, and maybe that's why Vince, didn't have his last, like, he didn't put his sign under it or so, like, officially, super officially, I don't know. But I'm not in the know of that anyway, so maybe Sword knows. I mean, he probably does, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see that form the way it is. Sword Dragon is now in public chat. We'll bring him in just a second. It's interesting to see that he is in an interesting position now in between these two coalitions. All right, Sword Dragon is now in the Sword Dragon is now in the channel. How you doing, Sword?
Not too bad, thanks yourself.
Let's get your voice calibrated. I'll turn you up 1 second.
Hope I did a fair assessment, I guess.
Thanks for joining us in the middle of the night. It's appreciated.
One of the great things about these shows and running live and the way that we do this in Talking in Stations Discord is that we can grab people and bring them in and get first-hand knowledge rather than speculation. So we have Sword Dragon here, leader of Dead Coalition.
Just
Couple
a stipulation. I'm happy to talk about the past. I won't talk about the future.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, actually, can we talk about recent past too? Because you were in the news about.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I guess if we want some context on it, what kind of position are you in right now with the Imperium coming up north? They said they're not allied with you officially.
There are no agreements between us and the Imperium. There's just understanding at points in times.
Like what kind of understandings?
Please don't bend me over your knee.
Okay, so the understanding is they're not going to stomp on you while they're up there.
So for years now, we have, mostly due to my own allegiances with members of leadership of Pando, been somewhat dragged along into wars that we probably shouldn't have for the best of our ability. We were drawn into a war against goons in Dell. We were paid for the war in, you guys call it the Casino War, but World War B or whatever. And obviously we aligned ourselves with those people at the time. And the reality is that long term, that was bad for us. We paid the price in every situation against goons, and over time it definitely whittled us down to where we are now, and we've basically been rebuilding since
You got cut off since when?
Since last year. So the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that when the deal was made with goons, it was made with NC's buy-in, and Headliner had been informed, and Gobbins had been informed. And we, after the deal was made, we just wanted a chance to rebuild. We'd been fighting Asher for 6 months with a little bit of initiative thrown in. And we were just incredibly weak, incredibly burnt out. After that deal was made, we had hoped to chill out for 6 months and basically just breathe a little. And our FCs wanted to have a break, and then immediately Gobbins hit us. And it gave us a perfect out. For once, we actually had the perfect reasoning to leave the association with PanFam. And because before that, I would just be called a backstabber, which I am anyway, but it called a backstabber, I should clarify.
Backstab to my heart, Sword Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. So we were given the perfect out, the ability for us to leave and not have any look like any reason to, because there was still a lot of dislike for goons, while at the same time still somewhat of an allegiance towards both people in PanFam and people in NC. And when we were invaded, that went out the it was just NC that we cared about for a long time, and that was due to long-standing relationships between myself and Vince, who I was in NC back in the day. Right. And then even that went out the window about 5 weeks. And yeah, so we were given an out, and it was the easiest decision for us, because in my coalition, I may run the big day-to-day things, but the are the ones who make the big decisions. And as soon as they felt betrayed by Gobbins and co, it was much easier for them to say fuck.
You're getting cut off a little bit if you hold the button a little bit longer. This is not the first time. It's not the first time you've kind of been in the middle of two different sides. I remember right after the Casino War or the Northern Invasion, you had Tess starting to put down residents along with CO2, and they were allied, and NC and I think PL decided that to move them out, and that's before they went down and formed Legacy, and that was January of 2017, if I'm not mistaken. But you were like a third party in that, and what was your position on that, the eviction of Test and CO2 by Northern Coalition right after the World War B?
So CO2, GigX in perfect style told us to go fuck it. and so we cut off our relationship with them. But then we still held a lot of kind of connection to Test. The only reason we didn't join in the war to remove Test was because of that. But there was a constellation in Declan that was held by NC. And so we couldn't really join either side because some of our own space in Declan was owned by one side and we had friends with Test on the other side. And NC came to us and said, if you help with this war, we will give you that constellation. And that would basically unify our space completely. And so that was why we got involved in the war in the end.
So it's very interesting, and I meant what I said. I think you're in a very interesting position because you're really right now. I suppose you said that you've just kind of had an agreement with. You're getting out of the way, basically. Does this mean that the Imperium has, and they would have it anyway, right? I suppose permission or whatever to get up to Venal without
I don't
you
control
interfering?
Venal, it's NPC space. I won't interfere with them. There's no reason for them.
But doesn't like Pure Blind kind of step over you into Venal? Well, in other words, you're not going to interfere with their plans in any way.
No, there's no reason to.
And what's your relationship with Vince and Lady Scarlet now?
My relationships with them are purely personal, no longer Eve related.
So you're still friendly in real life, but you're not necessarily working together in any way in the game.
No, we haven't shared a Discord with NC for 6 months. We haven't shared one with Horde for about 8 months, and same with PL.
Oh, interesting. What do you think's going to happen?
I don't know. I don't like to comment.
That's future think. Okay. Well, sir, thanks for explaining that. We're going to be watching because that's a real interesting position that you're in. But it seems like you're going to navigate it because you've done it before in the past.
It's actually probably the easiest position I've ever been with in my whole time in Eve, because I was always dragged along into engagements that I never wanted, or people in PanFam would go and shoot tests in the south or stuff like that, and create more enemies for the group that I'm a part of. And that's Vily would understand this by association. You create, like, testers come and fucked with me multiple times because of what NC and PL have done to them, because we were the weaker of the group and the easy target. And for once, we don't have to worry about that. And it's actually nice. It's good to be out from underneath it. It's like, I mean, we're in the Godzilla moment of like, let them fight. But I can say that the relationship, my FCs in the last 3 months, even by barely working with the Imperium in my, obviously we are working with them. It's not a hidden fact. Multiple of my FCs came and poked me and said, I've never felt such respect towards ourselves from a group that we aren't allied with, because we never got it inside PanFam. In the servers we shared with PanFam, there was always continuously shitting on us. Horde were always generally really, really good to us. Alpha Star Pilot and a few of the other people were always really, really good at and respectful towards. But the PLFCs and the NCFCs were just, I mean, the easy way of saying it is like absolute shitheads towards us. And not so much to me, but to my FCs. And in the lead up to the last war, when our FCs were feeling really beaten down and hated and hurt, where we hoped that the ally would outstretch a hand and help, all they did would just say over and over again is, "Oh, stop feeding your shit, get over it." And that was it was hard to be getting fucked with so heavily on one, and then have your allies say that to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one other thing, I think you recently lost an FC and I don't want to go into why and all the other drama that surrounds it and stuff, but that was a tough decision. It must have been a tough decision to let go of, was it Riot Rick?
He hasn't been active for about 6 months.
Okay. He was an FC, though. And who did you actually ask to leave, or who left Dud Coalition? Group-wise.
Huh?
Was there a group that you, or Slice, or...
Slice was asked to leave, yes.
Yeah, but then I heard it was only partially Slice. Like, what's that about?
No, it was
Slice.
the Alliance.
Oh.
When the top of the tree does something wrong, the tree needs to be pulled out of the ground.
Oh, so you asked Slice, the whole Alliance, to leave the Coalition.
It wasn't
okay.
an ask, but yes.
All right, you gave him the boot. Okay, I just wanted to figure out like what the truth was behind that, because I wasn't sure. But you did ask them to leave, and they have taken off.
Yeah, they're moving to Ethereum Reach. Last I heard.
Okay, and then I heard a second thing that they were going to be targeted as part of this invasion if they were around. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, I don't know anything about that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And you didn't arrange anything, did you?
Fuck no. The level of talk on a strategic level between myself and Imperium is not there. FC's day-to-day.
Yeah.
Where did Imperium end off, by the way? What's their final destination? I never even bothered to look.
I think they're in 6RQ.
6RCQ?
Yep, they're at the Keepstar there. That's the last time I tracked all their Titans, and that's where they docked up and logged off.
See, something you guys should actually know about the agreement is one of the understandings of the agreement was that the 6RC Keepstar would come down. But the moment that Gobbins decided to do what he did and then PL helped them, I just said there is literally no reason whatsoever for you to take that Keepstar down. The Keepstar, I wanted the Keepstar down to stop me from getting burnt. The point is that it was my hands get wiped clean and I just the shock of it's not really a shock. Vily talked about it before. The PanFam people, they do this all the time. PL farmed us multiple times since the Casino War, or World War B, sorry. And we were just sick of it. People were sick of it. And so why would we say get rid of the Keepstar when goons held up every part of their and even people like Pando, for example, like they were very, very much sticking to the rules of the deal, and there were awkward moments. There were awkward moments where they would come and fuck us up, but at the same time, they showed up multiple times to save assets of ours when they could have just let them die. And for us, it was like, yeah, the Titan thing. On one hand, I woke up one morning with, we had 5 Titans and who tackled them? Horde. Okay, how many died? None. What was one? I can't remember. And I was like, oh, okay, how did they get out? Like, obviously, if they're hard tackled, how the fuck did they get out? And they were like, well, initiative saved us. And I was like, well, fuck, did I wake up in the twilight? It's, yeah, I mean, everyone can say this is Aerith's massive plan, but this was the stupidity of PanFam's leadership in completely and utterly alienating us in every aspect that they could when there was literally no reason to, because we would have been the target again in 6 months' time. They could have just come back north and stomped us. And instead, we've just been able to step aside.
And you would have been the target because when you attack a big group, you start to whittle off the edges of the group, right?
Geography is more the reason than anything.
Yeah.
He's just kind of the front line no matter what he does.
Well, there's also
that feeling from the Casino War myself, being on the edge of the geography.
Yeah. Isn't Triumvirate?
There's a very different thing between a full-out war and the kind of farming that the NCPL types would try. They've been doing it for years, and that's their kind of modus operandi. And they're slowly running out of people who are going to put up with it in any way. And that's what you're seeing now. You're hearing it from SWORD, you're hearing it from other groups, and you reap what you sow.
And you're from Brave that has been a victim of it from Pandemic Legion in the past?
Absolutely. I mean, they chase us around the galaxy, and I'm not really bitter about it, but it has taught me some lessons about the game, and it has set in stone my mind of who we will ever ally with, and who we will come to rescue, even if it's one of those enemy of my enemy things. There are relationships that get broken in the Eve game that may not apply to the personal world, which is what Sword has talked about. But inside the Eve game, there are a lot of relationships that have been basically permanently burned. And I don't think they're going to get repaired with some of those groups.
I think one thing to note is anybody who knows the history of Darkness, this version of Darkness before BTAC-R, where in BTAC-R we were a different version, where we were quite happy to side with goons because we were part of the Russian bloc. But the part that came after was a lot of the corps that joined us were from groups that didn't like goons, and we were heavily goons. And in the 6 months between the agreement and now, I've seen some of my most hardcore goon-hating members who were, you're talking 10-year-old members from the old days of goons, just come to me and say, so why aren't we working with goons? And for me, I'm like, well, fuck, I never thought that you would actually come and say that to me, because you are your history, and the feel of hatred that was for hatred for goons is now the hatred for PanFam, and that is just so hard to fathom as a leader who has been leading a certain way for so long, that you've now had to reset everything inside your own coalition. And that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months.
Real quick, as a side note, Dunk, can you explain what farming is?
Well, for those that don't know, farming is when one group comes into the home system or a mining system of another group that's in some ways weaker or incapable of fighting back. And sometimes they come in force and devastate a bunch of stuff, or they'll come in a kitey bullshit fleet that flies around and just eats up things to pad their kill boards, and basically gets a lot of kill mells in a way that makes the attackers feel like they're superior, and then the defenders are frustrated but just kind of feeding in. So that kind of farming goes on all over the place. But when it happens repeatedly from one group over and over, it creates personal feelings and emotions, and those things last for a long time.
And also,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there should be something to be said to what it's done to the game as well. If you look at the Imperium side, with your Karma fleet and your well set up like test Karma fleet, or sorry, dreaded Karma fleet, Brave, all setting up places that bring in newbies and help them and really and really help them in the game. And then you have another side that's sole goal is to be elite and shit all over those newbies. And so you look at the health of the game now and you go, okay, part of it's CCP, part of it's them not developing the correct tools or developing the wrong kind of tool. And then you look at the players as well that have contributed towards it, and you're like, okay, well, what part do we? And that you look at the PL and the NC of the groups, and we never had spies in Horde, and when Horde attacked us, we put our spies in, and we saw what they were doing to newbies. And there are certain parts of Horde that are good, but for the most part, it's just continuous. We didn't see anyone really getting help, and so we saw two different sides of each. And for the health of the game, it's very interesting to see how that affects the future of the game.
And there's people in chat that kind of, poo-poo the idea of farming, and they're like, oh, it's just playing Eve. But the reality is there's a lot of fights that go on. Goons come into Brave space all the time with fleets. Redline's always there. They'll bring a fleet. We smash our fleets together. Everybody has a good time. We're throwing capitals at each other, YOLOing them back and forth, having a good time. And no one feels like it's farming. It feels like we're having content, we're having fun, we're using our spaceships, we're duking it out. and we're enjoying the game, and the emotion of the bully beating on the weaker person is not there. It's a different kind of feeling. So there are differences in the way fights happen. It doesn't mean you're not fighting. It means that you can maintain morale, and I think there's a big difference in it. And people want to pretend like it's not, and they'll want to talk about blue donuts and all this stuff. But that's really not the case of how it really plays out in these situations. And it's one thing to post on Reddit, you want to reset everybody. It's a very different thing to be under assault 24 hours a day and have your shit always reinforced.
Well, I think you just said it there at the end. They almost extort you to come out and fight. They'll destroy this thing. They hold it ransom if you don't come out and fight. And so it kind of feels a lot different than going out and I don't know, roaming or whatever. Okay, but
well, the biggest problem, like I'll just add a component that has been missed in this conversation. There's nothing traditionally super wrong with farming other people. Like it's just part of the game to a degree, right? You're farming people versus, NPC spaceships. The issue is that has generally drawn so much ire and so much hatred towards groups in the pandemic crew, which is PL and NC, has been their unwillingness to lose. So when they went to farm Brave in Cloud Ring or other locations, anytime Brave would finally put up a resistance where they could have a chance to win, right? Not that they would win, that they would have a chance to win. There would be situations where you would see, here come the Revenants, here come the Hot Dreads, here come the Carriers, where there's no ability for these small entities to compete at all. Like they're entirely outship class. They have no possible ability to counter this, and the enemy knows this, and then they just laugh at them and say, undock your dreads, you could have killed us, ha ha ha. And it's just this situation that creates this extra level of hatred where you have these enfranchised players really shitting on the newer players, and then these enfranchised players wondering, like, why don't they just feed into my guns, ha ha ha, I am so elite.
Yeah, and my point isn't that farming is bad or good or whatever. It's a thing and it happens. My point is it's the farming and the behavior of the past that leads to the situation that the North finds itself in now. That's my point.
Part of the North.
Part of the North, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to note, right? Like right after World War B, Test and and Brave as well, we're both in the North. We're both up there to live and have fun and whatever. And look at where we are now. That wasn't our initial plans, to say the least. But when somebody starts farming you in a situation where you have no recourse, your choice is to move or die, right? Because eventually the farming it takes a toll, right? And the current groups in the North are very much of the situation where they don't know how to stop. They don't know when to stop. So if they start farming you, they're going to farm you until they kill you. So it's one of those situations where you have to move forward or move away so that you can grow strong enough to actually be able to punch back, I guess you could say.
We had the same relationship with Dunk. I mean, when we were GO2G and we moved into Declan, Brave moved into DO6, and there was a very clear border, and we didn't overfarm each other. There was continuous fun, but what caused Brave to leave was PL. PL showed up and shit all over Brave, and they overfarmed the cow. I mean, that's the point, is if you want the livestock to survive long term, don't overfarm them. Don't kill off all the livestock. Come back in 6 months and try again. And they don't have the ability to do that. It's been the same for years. I used to be a part of the problem. I was in PL. I led campaigns in PL. I was in NC. I led campaigns in NC. This has been going on for years and a fundamental part of those alliances. And one of the reasons why I think they need to have this moment is every group has had a chance to Phoenix. I got shit on heavily in the last war. We lost tons of stuff. We had to reevaluate how we did. Test and CO2 had the same situation in Tribute. They had to go south and reevaluate what they did and how. But if you look at Horde and NC and PL, and forever they've basically been dodging these attacks and just moving to a different place, re-upping and doing exactly the same thing over and over and over again. And I think for once, it's good to see them as the front and them taking the direct losses. They did loot, like NC lost a ton of stuff in X4, but infrastructure-wise, they lost one Keepstar. Everything else was my infrastructure, not theirs. And for once, they will actually be in a war where they will take the losses, not someone else being their meat shield.
And I'll just add, because I have a lot of friends in PL and NC, it's not just that group. Snuff has the same thing going on where Snuff is running out of people that will do things with them. A lot of the wormhole people, the same thing. It's not a new thing. It's not just an NCPL thing. It's an EVE thing. But I think this relationship of the farming and the over-farming, it does come into play in the wars in which who's going to ally with who's going to be okay with things. It is a bit of payback from time to time to these groups.
Yeah. One of the big things I've always been a proponent of is that you don't get to double dip when you kind of deal with me, or maybe, and I think Imperium is much the same to a degree, but many alliances want to be friends with you, but they also want to be in a situation where you can be their food, right? And there's a tendency for people where they're like, oh yeah, I'll just take the deal now and it'll be good, but there comes a point where you have to draw the line and you say, friends are not food, and you don't get to no, like I'm dead serious, because this is a major issue that has been crept through the diplomacy of EVE for a long time, and it's where people make these deals. It's like with Pandemic Legion has been especially the big purveyor of them, but I'll help you for a little bit, but just let me eat you a little bit, right? And I remember one of the Northern Drone Diplos at the time when we were planning to move at a Vale, conveying me, he's like, it's not too bad, just let PL farm you a little bit, it'll be all good. And I was like, I will fucking die rather than let these, not going to swear, people do that to us. And it was and then they broke diplomatic protocol and copy pasted it to their buddies in Pandemic Legion who made fun of me for it, but it was like a hilarious little point in time, just because you have to be able to stand up for yourself at that degree, because if you let yourself be farmed, you will never grow and improve.
It's the point of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Well, then you should also talk about that one Keepstar, wink wink.
Sure.
I mean, that was double dipping from your side. I mean, I didn't take it personally because it wasn't my thing, but
how was it double dipping from us?
Wait, first explain the situation, Pando, because I'm not clear on what you're talking about. Sorry, I'm not clear on what you're talking about.
So, basically, Snuff was attacking the Keepstar, and we were working together with Snuff to help them. And that Keepstar is PanFam related. And then Test came in and formed big, and we couldn't field our toys that are needed to kill a Keepstar, which is Titans, without knowing if Test would just drop on them. And we got different stories from Test, right? So one FC says, oh yeah, we're working with you, and then a second or two before we actually drop our Titans, we get the info, oh no, we're not working with you. It could have ended in a lot of dead inner Titans there. And
well, being that I wasn't moving,
felt like
it
a
definitely
setup.
wasn't going to end that way. But I understand how the communication error happened, and it is what it is. But there's no way that's double dipping, because that's exactly the reason. Because at that point we had basically broken off our relations with Snuff because they tried to double dip on us. They tried to feed on my move up and then still be friends, and you don't get to do both.
It kind of reminds me of a zombie movie. Can I just take a bite of your arm? Thank you. Okay, let's move on though. Let's move on to Tribute. Sorry, not Tribute. The invasion of Tribute starting in the edge of Fountain and into Pure Blind. Where's Triumvirate in this, and are they going to put up resistance? Because they moved into I think Pure Blind, didn't they? Or Fade?
They've left.
Oh, they're already gone.
When it comes to toxic people and stuff, I never had much contact with Tri, but I've heard some stories. So they've got that same PanFam issue with toxicity and hate towards people. So I think they struggle to get numbers and stuff. So I don't think they are any factor in this war, to be honest.
That's funny.
I expect every alliance that has a partial connection to PanFam now will be put into Ethereum Reach to be the new GOTG. They will be moved from places like Pure, Blind, Venal, Tenal, Tribute, and will be moved. I mean, you can see the same with Slash. You can see Try doing exactly the same thing. They just evac'd to low set. I'm not surprised if you see them in Ethereum Reach in a couple of weeks.
Well, is there space actually in the drone regions? Because that's a lot of skill used, rental farms that
They kicked out
talking
and
about.
spoken out of Ethereum. That's
Yeah,
why
but that's only like
space.
4 or 5 constellations, right?
Yeah, and Tries like 50 people.
I more so meant Northern Coalition and Pandemic Legion and that crew. Like
NC has Malpace and the Spire. It's plenty of room for them.
Okay, so Triumvirate's not going to start jamming systems and trying to survive for a few weeks or whatever. Maybe not. Who knows?
I think Initiative and Snuff killed it all already.
Is that true, Pando? You guys work fast.
Sorry, what do we care?
Triumvirate? Cynojammers?
I'm pretty sure someone killed something. I'm not too.
You don't know.
I mean, we're focusing a little bit on Try, but it's just, it's probably, you could call it farming, but I don't know.
Oh, let's not go back. Let's go forward.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a little bit of counter strike that was happening. Horde put up a number of structures. I think they're Astra houses. I think it's the
Retarders.
Oh, were they Retarders? Okay.
Yeah, Horde is not that rich, so they cannot drop Astra houses.
But basically, they're dropping cheap structures so that people can harass Delve while Delve is undefended, right?
And Imperium did that in a recent war before too, so it's not a new thing. The Imperium calls it Roach Motels, which probably doesn't make any sense if you're not in North America, but it's a little trap that you can put in your house that will kill bugs that they go inside and die. Anyway, so it's.
Are you describing Roach Motels?
Yeah, well, I have to. That's what they call when you drop cheap structures in hostile space, and you don't intend them all to survive, but you want a few of them to get through, and you want to then use them as little forward operating bases. That is likely to change when CCP roll out a new set of structures specifically as forward operating bases someday. But anyway.
They also want the enemy to. You also want to draw your enemy into trying to herf it up heavily. We learned that the hard way. All we did is we herfed up 3 or 4 times to try and kill the Retaros that Asher put down. And all he did is if we killed them, he just put another one up. And it just goes on and on. The best thing to do is just ignore them.
Okay, and so you also see Volta took down a few. Well, they took down a few things. It looks like Rorquals and a couple of supers. I think
there are 6 supers just for this morning so far.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So they're adding to it.
Those people should have been deployed. Like, nobody cares about them dying. Like, literally nobody cares about them dying. And we just point and laugh and think they're stupid. And if they're all of the same corps, then we might yell at that corps leadership to get their people waked up and make sure they know we are at war and get them on services so they get pings, etc. But we point and laugh and literally nobody cares. And as I said before, people need new supers and roll calls, etc. after the war so they can keep doing that. So that's a good place for our minerals to go to, and we make some ISK again.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it's not a full-fledged counterattack, but it is some operations in Delve because it's not as defended as it normally is. Everybody's up north.
That's a bit of an understatement. Not as defended as it normally is. No defense at all.
Is it really no defense? I mean, is it like...
The standing fleets are put down, and basically maybe there's some groups that do it like corps do it by themselves or some etc. But we have no standing fleet at the moment.
You're going from like the most powerful Iron Dome imaginable to like literally like Mad Max Fury Delve, like just anything goes, right? So,
but I heard that you have what do you call it? An alpha is there that you could use for defense.
That's not for protecting people who are ratting and mining. There is zero chance that leadership will ping a home defense fleet for that. Zero.
Well, what do you do if things get reinforced down there, though? You would defend that, wouldn't you?
That's completely different. That's actual PvP. That's not just jumping on someone's radar with hyperspatial rigs and shit. Excuse me. No.
All right. Well, I just wonder because if nobody's down there defending the place, what happens if things start getting reinforced? Like, what would happen in that
But
scenario?
the structures in SOV in the current iteration of the gameplay, they defend themselves. They are literally horrible to reinforce. And so why does anyone want to do it? So there's no reason they just go down there and roam. They need this for the morale win. That is their morale win. Go down, kill something while losing tons of shit at home.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
let's say-
6 or 7 supers is a pretty good little morale win, but like, you're definitely not wrong that most of the structures defend themselves quite well. Like anything that's on a keep star, and there's like 30 fucking keep stars in Delve, like something ridiculous. So it basically is like auto defended, just because you instantly get doomsdays if you trying to shoot jammers or bridges on keep stars. But there is some targets they can hit, but obviously they're going to have the ability to come back and form for those timers when they need to. Since all the main offensive timers in the north are going to be timed to sounds like AU time zone. So,
and
When
it's
they can.
undeniably fun to drop on a super carrier and kill it. Undeniably fun. Everyone enjoys that. Our PvP guys are looking at those kills going, nice kill, that's fun. But it's not really, it's something you can do to have fun. And it's a great opportunity right now with no super cap umbrella. And if your coalition hasn't pinged some strat op that you actually need to be in, why not go out and have fun?
Pando, right after this, you can go, but there's 45 keep stars in the Delve area. Vily, how many keep stars do you have?
25, but
Wow.
like our keep stars are much more like highway focused than anything.
Pando, do you have
And
something?
cosmetic.
I just wanted to throw in, like, they could entose some systems and stuff, and the initial entoses would probably work, but it's so much work to actually get it done. So everyone knows they're not going to show up to actually get it done. And if they do, like, it's going to probably hit their morale harder than anything. So,
Yeah, I
think-
definitely thought the choice to bring both shield and armor supers with them was interesting. It's definitely like a Cortez kind of thing, like a very, we're all in on this to win. But it definitely lowers the shield a lot at home. And it's like in Esoteria, for example, we've been leaving the armor supers, which is not near as strong as our shield since we started all on shield. But you need those caps and supers, or else you do very quickly lose control of your own space, which is tricky. So I'm curious as to how that decision is going to play out overall.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like burn the boats. In other words, if you have a super or a Titan hanging around in the south, you're on your own. Okay, so that's happening in Delve, and interestingly, Volta has an agreement with PL and Horde. I think they call each other when they trap things, so they're kind of working together.
There's a difference between bat phoning people when you catch something big and like working together. Working together says you planned the op together or something. But I think they, Volta is based in Thera. At a certain time of day, they roll some wormholes and find a good one, and they go through and raid. And if, in this case, they have sets of friends that they call in different places depending on what hole they get and what prey they catch. That's how I see it.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, I have a bias.
And the ramifications of this, I'm sure we'll see, as Apple Pear said, the MER, the monthly economic report, will show there's no mining in Delve, at least the way it normally is. So it'll be interesting to see inter-month, like what that looks like. A question from Dirk here, or a comment, is does anyone else think that this is going to be an actual war? Are they reluctant to call it a war? Are there expectations of fighting, or is this going to be kind of a a burning down of structures in the north that mostly goes uncontested.
Dunk is eloquent in video just now. If you're a podcast listener at home, he just yawned briefly when the
On purpose.
wanted to ask the war question.
I only got
I don't think so.
I only got like half a cup of coffee in me, and I'm just.
Oh,
All right. Well, no thoughts on that because it seems like it's pretty fait accompli.
I think it's too early to make a.
I think the new
estimation.
Sino Jammers are going to present some really dynamic level problems for the attack and the clear purging of the space. I mean, mind you, maybe NCNPL don't, put in the work and reset the jammers every day and do whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But
the problem is, Vily, is like for you guys that are fighting the Chinese, they have the people at the time that they've set all the iHubs they've set for 0700, and that's literally just there's no one around. But the attacker will have no problem killing the iHubs, which negates the jam.
That could be.
Maybe they could just hire Elo Knight.
Well,
also, the difference
sounds
is,
like we're going to be keeping Elo busy.
No,
Also,
he
the
wouldn't
difference
do
is-
that. He doesn't like the botting, right?
It's a joke. Come on.
once
so-
the Gemma is down as well, and you have that big a supercap force, it's nearly impossible to put a new one because you can just ping and drop 150, 200 super carriers on it, and
In theory, but if you're currently staged from 6 RCQ, that's a mid and a half at least.
it's like 3 mids, but yeah.
3 mids. Okay, yeah, well.
So there was some talk also, Vily, that this was going to be a two-front war and that Test was going to go in on Malpace and hitting the rentership over there. Has there been any discussion about that sort of a two-front plan?
If there was, I can't really talk about it here.
Okay. Just trying to draw you out. All right. So there may or may not be. Okay, well, I guess the future is still cloudy, but it looks like the Imperium is coming for the northern structures at least, and who knows what they'll do to the place and how long they'll stay afterwards and that sort of stuff. We have yet to hear from NCNPL and Horde about what they intend to do as far as defenses, but from what I've heard, it's pretty much take the fights you can take and wait out the storm.
Well, everyone prepare yourself. Prices are going up. Up.
So what other news do we have from around the board? Anything going on with you, Vily, down there against Fraternity?
Not particularly. The trench warfare continues. Maybe we're preparing for another push. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're getting ready for crazy shenanigans. Anything could happen. But it's a continuing to be a simmering kind of boil in terms of the hostilities. And anytime you've got a fire going, it can turn into a wildfire the next day. So who knows?
So how's the group that you're incubating there in Omist from China, Chinese players?
So the Army of Mango just moved into Omist. They took over the space that was previously held by Kids with Guns. So we went from a renter group to an actual group, which is, actually, against botting, et cetera, et cetera. But, they're moving in. They're experienced players, but they're extremely limited on what they have with skill points, right? So it's an extremely tricky situation to be in. Fraternity has actually told their members to not roam them because they don't want to make an enemy of, like, as we discussed earlier, how, farming someone makes them hate you very quickly. Winterco doesn't want to make an enemy of the only other large Chinese group in the game, who also happens to be the one that basically chased them off the last server they used to play on. So,
Excuse me, the only other biggest Chinese group?
well, at that scale, yeah.
I don't tend to agree, but all right.
Well, what, you think Ranger Regiment qualifies, or is like
They can form 600 dudes. I think they qualify.
Sure.
Who are they voting for CSM?
Wait and find out.
Adderall.
Okay. No campaigning until the end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Ranger Regiment is, not a. They're obviously a primarily Chinese group or whatever, but Army of Mango and Fraternity have been Fraternity has been the primary, obviously, and the assumption would be that they should, if they encapsulate the growth of Chinese players from the coming down surfer and take over some of their old friends that will join them, etc., they should end up becoming the secondary or primary. We'll see how that goes. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I've actually got a moderate amount of respect for Regiment. They're a pretty solid little group that lives up in Branch. They obviously have their own issues from time to time, like everybody, but they're not bad.
I think the smartest play for PanFam would be abandon Tribute and put all of their help behind Fraternity. That would be what I would do.
It seems like an odd choice.
You're not going to win in Tribute anyway, so.
Well, they don't really need help to win in, Detroit. They're doing okay holding the line without him.
That's true.
All right. Thanks, Vily, for getting us up to date on what's going on over there. Be interesting to see how this dynamically moves. Okay, so that is it for the news sections today. I guess we just have some announcements. Want to thank McLeod, who you see there, if you're watching the video. He's our engineer, so we put him on camera today. And Dunk for jumping in with his monocle. That was what he had on earlier. But I also want to thank Apple Pear. Actually, you've been kind of quiet lately. Pando, Vily, and Sword for jumping in right here at the last second to give us a lot of firsthand information on what's going on in a tribute. This is a giant invasion, and we'll see how far it goes. This seems to be the continuation of 2018, where Goonswarm had come up, or the Imperium had come up to the north and ravaged a lot of structures, and we'll have to see what happens next. Okay, last comments for our guests, Pando or Sordicus or Vily or Dunk. If you guys have any, we can just go in order here if you do or don't. Dunk, why don't you?
I was in a fleet this morning with the Mango people, chatting with them, and they were running around in jackdaws causing havoc. So prepare yourself, people. I think the Mangoes are coming. And Triglavian industry, hopefully we hear a lot about it at Eve Down Under next week. I'm flying to Australia, so Australia people, I'll see you there.
Last I saw them, they were in Tower Wars. Now they're in Jackdaws. They're pushing it. Definitely.
I actually haven't seen a battle report yet. Does someone have one? Like, what numbers can they pull now?
And I think what's interesting is a couple of weeks ago when we had Elo on, Elo played on the Chinese server for 2 or 3 years, and he said some of the best subcap FCs he's ever known were in PIBC. So that'll be interesting to see how they acclimatized us.
As much as that's true, I'm skeptical about the Olympic athlete FCs of the other side.
So PIBC's old main FC was a guy called Drone Wang, who is now in Ranger Regiment and the main FC for Ranger.
My point stands.
All right, Sword, or if you have any, we call it a can't let it go.
Get out for voting for CSM when it happens. And for those of you going to EDU, obviously most Australians are there. I'll be interested to say hello. I'll be there next week.
Are you running again, Sword?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Sword Dragon's up again. Now, last time you kind of ran as a ticket with NC Dot, and you and Killer B, I think, traded ballots. That won't be happening this time, I suppose.
Not that I know of. That's the future thing.
Roger. And here's one thing that I have to give you credit for. This is, elections are coming up in less than a month. There's only a week to vote. And you ask Slice to leave on principle your alliance, which really knocks out a bunch of votes for you. And I thought that was a pretty brave thing to do.
I kicked 2 alliances. People just don't know about the other one.
What was the other one?
It was a small Russian alliance called Unreal.
What, kicked them for the same reason, or?
No, they they had problems. They were old Solar Corp, and their CEO was running the alliance the same way as Sol MacTep would run, and it was causing lots of drama. So I got rid of them. But yeah, I mean, I know that it'll probably hurt my chances of getting elected. But yeah, so.
And I've noticed that you also don't campaign. You're one of the few guys that doesn't really campaign.
Why would I make myself open to the attacks I get from the public when I would do it? I'm doing some special campaigning this time. It just hasn't happened.
Okay. You want to tell us about that? Like what you're going to do?
I'm going on Russian TV, actually, in the next month or so. The Russian podcast, I think it is something like my Russians are setting up.
Wild. I didn't know that was there.
Are you going to plan to speak Russian, or are they going to be really gracious?
They're going to translate.
English?
It translate and such.
Nice.
Do you have a history with Russians? Because didn't you have a part of a coalition there after Fountain War?
I've always worked with the Russians. Yeah. As far back as Nink and X-Death and all. Right. The one thing that's always definitely misrepresented since Death stopped being a CSM, and the Chinese as well, you can see it in the minutes, is I do believe in the other countries that don't get representation, and I always try to bring their issues up on the CSM, and as such, they vote for me.
All right. And Pando?
What are we doing? Shoutouts or something? Or
No. I don't like shoutouts. It's more like, because shoutouts is just throwing people's names out there and thanking them for things. But I call this like a can't let it go or segment or something. It's just if you have any last comments about something to look forward to or something you're going to be doing or anything like that.
Well, I'm looking forward to flying a couple of different things in the war to come. Hopefully test some stuff. Got some good ideas. And yeah.
I saw that you have a new creations.
Well, it was just like one thing that I decided I'm going to do today. Like I'm not going to do it today, but today I decided. So it's a smaller thing. It's not going to be a main fleet kind of doctrine, but it's just for fun to mix it up. You know, we've been flying smaller stuff like Stukas all day, every day, just because you can't really travel with like battleships for 40 jumps, really, right? And this war gives us the opportunity to actually take out some bigger stuff for once, and we're going to take full advantage of that.
You going to tell us what it is, or is it going to be a surprise attack?
It has to be a surprise, right?
Right.
He doesn't even tell us about it.
Say what?
Yeah.
He barely tells us about it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you remember Ravens? People knew about the Ravens literally when I told them to buy the contracts. That's when I found out what the mystery doctrine is actually. And then 5 minutes later, we actually already bridged in and take it to dreads.
Yeah, it was labeled to us as a mystery doctrine, and like there was almost like a competition within the initiative of people trying to figure out what the doctrine was. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
All right.
Weird that nobody guessed Armor Ravens, huh?
No.
All right, so there's Pando creating more doctrine, something he's known for, and he keeps his guys in the dark. So nobody knows what's next. Last is Vily, if there's anything you wanted something you can't let go.
Something I can't let go.
It's just a way of saying like your last chance to say something that in case we missed anything you wanted to talk about. If not, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say this.
You know what? I want to say I'm happy to see that everyone in this room right now has the same point of view on like the toxicity and stuff in the game, and I think maybe PanFam is learning this lesson right now, that this is not going to give him that's not going to get him anywhere long term. So thanks to all the good decent people out there, the positive ones.
Well, we didn't have Elise on the show today. He couldn't make it, so I'm sure he would defend Pandemic Legion's past. And on behalf of Northern Coalition, it's not necessarily, it's certain FCs treating other FCs badly, right? It's not all the players.
That is
right?
true, of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying everyone in PanFam is the bad guy. That would be ridiculous. But there's certain leadership positions held by really toxic people that are just dragging PanFam down too, I believe.
FC
And,
set the tone.
Yeah.
FC set the
Exactly.
tone for how
Yeah, you
people
have
should
to-
act.
Whether they like it or not, SCs are role models for, the regular grunts, as it were. So, yeah.
All right, so I just want to point out that Vily is running for CSM.
Yes, he is, in theory.
Anything to say about that? I don't think you worry about it, right? You got all your guys going to vote for you.
Yeah, if I'm allowed to run, I'm confident that I will be elected.
Ooh, do you think you'll not be allowed to run?
I said a bad word on Twitch once. Anything could happen.
So
You guys laugh, but like, you never know.
You don't.
You guys better be careful.
Yeah, so last year, the guy running from test, something surfaced, and he said something that was not good, and he was barred from running at the last second, and it didn't allow test to replace him in time, so they didn't have a candidate that went in. So anyway, that's what that joke's about. Okay, so also running for CSM is Dunk Dinkle, Sorticus or Sort, and Vily that's on this program, and also myself. Who's doesn't have a constituency yet.
Can I add something regarding the CSM and the elections?
Sure.
This CSM elections, with everything that went on with Brisk and the amount of people that are running and the amount of people that are a notoriety that are running, don't be the person who turns around and says, "There's no need to vote. This person's going to get on." All you do by that is actually assure that person gets on. In the STV system, every vote does count, from who you put first to who you put 10th. Please get out there and vote. I don't care if it's for me. I don't care if it's Vily or Matterall or Dunk. The game needs the CSM for as little or as much effect it has on CCP. And losing faith in it and convincing other people to lose faith in it hurts the institution as a whole. The last 2 years of CSM has been quite good. There is quite a lot of rep run with CCP now. Obviously, keep up with that. Please don't discount it. Go out there, do your research, find out who you want to vote for, and actually vote for them. Don't posture and not vote.
All right. Well, that does it for Talking in Stations. As usual, we'll jump into public chat, and you guys can come hang out with the people who are on this show if you have questions and comments and stuff like that. As far as announcements for Talking in Stations, I want to say that we do podcasts 1600 UTC on Tuesday and Thursday. It's more of a chill thing, but those are going to be turned into Ask Me Anythings, but I'm even turning that into Ask Us Anything and inviting other CSM to have some airtime every week if you show up at that hour. You can take questions, answer questions, have discussions, that sort of stuff. We will turn it into a CSM roundtable or open public discussion until the elections. And I want to also say thanks to Ron for running a lot of live coverage.
My pleasure. I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. He runs it here on Talking in Stations Discord. You can see him in channel when he's streaming. And if you see him in there, then check his channel because that's where he streams too. And you can see some live coverage. And he covered the move op that was happening for us yesterday. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Really appreciate you guys checking in, and we will see you next time on Talking in Stations.